everyone, and welcome. I'm so happy to see such a nice crowd here today. And I also want to welcome our amazing panelists. I think that you will all quickly realize why we so appropriately named this panel How I Changed It, because these women are all amazing trailblazers in their own right, but I'm going to let them sort of tell their stories as we go along. But before I give a little context around how we got here, let me just let each of you introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about your business rather than me trying to do it myself. Yael, you want to start?
Sure. Hi everybody, my name is Yael Aflalo and I'm the founder of Reformation. Reformation is a sustainable fashion brand. We are fast fashion, so I know that's always like kind of a tricky thing to be sustainable in fast fashion, but we do it. And I'd like to think that we're pioneers in sustainable fashion. We do a lot of great work there to make sure that all the things that we make are substantially better than the average clothing out there. I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Smith. I'm the designer and founder of Millie. I launched Millie. It's a women's clothing collection. I do women's and children's. And I launched back in 2001 when I was a little baby, 27 years old. And today I'm 46. And Millie is distributed in about 500 stores around the world. And I have my own e-commerce and retail stores.
Awesome.
I'm Alli Webb. I started DryBar. Hopefully a lot of you in this room went maybe today. And yeah, we started the company in about almost 10 years ago now. I have naturally curly hair. That was really the impetus for the business. All we do are blowouts, no cuts, no color, our tagline. And yeah, it's been quite the journey. We've grown the business to over 120 locations. We have a full product line across the country and international in Sephora, Ulta, Nordstrom. So it's been kind of this wild journey that I've been on for the last almost 10 years of really making women look, but more importantly, feel amazing about themselves, one blowout at a time.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Heather Philp and I'm with Wells Fargo Bank. And unlike these amazing ladies up here, these are all entrepreneurs and I am in the field of banking. I have been in this industry now for about 25 years. I think I'm exaggerating just a little bit because I'm bringing the number down. It's actually probably closer to 30. But I really enjoy financial services and it is the backbone of everything that we do in this country, and it also enables many entrepreneurs to get the financing that they need in order to sustain and maintain their business. So I have responsibility at Wells Fargo for what we call our credit card product management organization. So this means that I'm responsible for a number of different products that you see in the marketplace, whether it's we have what's called a Cashwise Visa card that we're super excited about, and a host of a number of other products.
Thank you, Heather. And I started in financial services as well, so I'm all for that. But let me tell you all a little bit about why we brought these women together and why Visa is starting this conversation. So probably about a year ago, and I just joined Visa about a year ago, and so Mary and Reilly, I should introduce myself as well, and I run marketing for North America, so US and Canada. And one of the things that we looked at from a brand perspective was, as many brands are doing, how do we reach millennials? How are they thinking about brands very differently? And the insight that we found was specific to millennial women. And it really is around the fact that there's a lot of misperceptions. There's a lot of old stereotypes when it comes to women in general in reference to money. And there's so much conversation that started in 2018 around women and the movement, but there isn't enough conversation around money specifically. And we're just at this tipping point. 40% of women are the breadwinners in their family, 40%. Women are opening small businesses at 1.5 times the rate of the national average, yet they are only getting 2% of venture capital funding. That is mind-boggling to me. And when you think about, there's also the stereotype of women are more frivolous with money, or, you know, we're not the ones that are managing finances, yet particularly with millennial women, they're actually more concerned about saving for the future, thinking about financing. And in fact, women control 85% of household spending. I mean, that's not too surprising to me, but you know, I think when people hear that stat, it's surprising. So clearly, we want to start that conversation. We want for women to actually feel more comfortable talking about money. We want there to be, you know, equality in everything from pay, and hopefully you also are a manifesto downstairs. We want equality in pay. We want for women to be starting to get the venture capital funding, and we want to provide women with the confidence by starting these conversations. So therefore, we have these amazing women who have done this, and hopefully can help to give us some of their tips on how they got here or lessons learned along the way. So Yael, let me start with you, because obviously Reformation is you really had this mission around eco-friendly clothing and sustainability. What was it that made you want to go in that direction? And were you surprised by the reaction that your mission got when you actually launched it?
Yeah, so I just wanted to also say, like, that whole opening discussion is very interesting to me and very dear to my heart, and I think all of those statistics are really important.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I went on a trip to China and I saw fashion pollution firsthand, and I was completely shocked. I was working in traditional apparel at the time, and I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. Like, I had this moment that I was like, empathy and accountability. You know, you always think about this kind of industrialist or this like kind of polluter, kind of like dumping like toxic stuff in a river, and you're like, that's not me, that's somebody else. And I really had this connection to what I was doing. And at the time, there wasn't really any sustainable, fashionable brands out there. And I thought, you know what, I think I could probably do it, so I probably should. And that was 2011, 2012, when I kind of realized that this is what I should do. And then the second part was what was surprising about it.
Yes.
Well, it's so crazy because we've come so far where the discussion of sustainability and fashion, like now it's like every conference is about it, and like it's like such a buzzword, but a buzz topic rather. But in 2011, it was like, I remember we had a PR firm, and they were like, maybe we shouldn't talk about this. We probably shouldn't talk about the sustainability. There's a green fashion. There's a Green Vogue book in April, and we'll wait till then to talk about it. And it's just such a transformation, 8 years later,
Yeah.
to just have a complete turnaround. So that's really exciting.
So you started the conversation really about the whole thing when you think
I
about
mean,
it.
I don't know. We're gonna say there's a correlation. I don't know if I'm gonna give myself all the credit, but
That's a women thing too. We don't give ourselves the credit. We're too humble.
maybe in private I would give myself the credit, but I wanna be a little bit more humble on the stage.
Perfect, thank you. Alli, let me jump to you next, because you similarly started what was a behavior that didn't exist. So you created this new category, to your point of just blow drying your hair. When you started this, did you realize that you were being a trailblazer, that you were going to create this basically new market?
Nope. Not at all. I mean, you know, it really took me and, you know, my family by surprise that there was such a huge hole in the marketplace. I think I instinctually knew, because I think so many great businesses are started from a place of like, man, I wish that existed. Why isn't that out there? Similar to your business. And that's how I felt. Like, as a little girl, I dreamt of a place like DryBar. I didn't really know I did, and you know, it took me a lot of steps to get to the point of opening DryBar. And I'm such a big believer in like trusting your path, and all of the little things that you do in your life and your career ultimately like lead you to the right place. And you know, for me, it was like I had 2 kids. I was a stay-at-home mom, which I thought I wanted to do forever until I spent a couple years at home with my kids. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm gonna do something. And I started a mobile blow dry business, and during that time when I was talking to all these women, like, well, where do you go when I can't come to your house for a blowout? And they're like, well, I either, sneak into like the discount chain with my big glasses and I don't want anybody to see me, or I go to a full service salon where I'm overpaying and, it's variable pricing. And it was just like, wow, there really isn't a place. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off for me. And I thought, surely I can open one location in LA and it would do great. I went to my brother, who's bald, and was like, what the hell's a blowout? The whole thing. But after I got through all those hurdles and, realized, I could probably do this in LA, and my clients for my mobile business would surely come, and that's what happened. But we could not have underestimated the demand more. I mean, it was like, when we first opened our doors in 2010, it was like, we were like the hot club, and nobody could get in. It was just bananas, and we were like, holy shit, we're onto something. And so I didn't know. I really didn't realize, again, the opportunity that was in front of us. And then once, we did, and realized we needed to keep opening more and more locations, and there's just such a demand for it. And now it's like I hear so many women come up to me and like, I don't go to a board meeting without a blowout. I don't go on a date or a job interview or whatever it is. And so we did change behavior, but totally by accident, but I'm very proud, and I take full credit for doing that. But it's pretty amazing because I really didn't plan it, but it was just one of those things that so, happened organically, and yeah, the way we affect people's lives is pretty amazing.
And how many locations do you have now?
I think we have 120, which is,
Can't even keep track anymore.
but the fact that I'm not even totally sure.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, because now we've hired a team, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of things I used to have to do. So
Thank God you didn't listen to your bald brother.
yeah. He came around. I have
Another
to give him credit. We are here right now.
So Heather, you talked about your obviously in financial services, but before you went to Wells Fargo, you actually did start your own business. So talk about your journey and how you got to where you are, and what makes you excited to work in the field that you're in, because clearly as you opened, you are excited about financial services.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take 2 minutes and I'll give you a little bit of my background in terms of my overall career journey. So when I graduated from college, one thing I know I wanted to do was to work. I don't know what I wanted to do, but I just knew I had to get a job. So I think I graduated in June. I got a job in July because that's what I was passionate about. I had to keep working. And I got a job in publishing. I didn't care about publishing, to be really honest with you, but I got a job, and there I was. I jumped right in. And I realized what I was passionate about when I got to work was really around marketing. I couldn't care less if I was marketing a book, a t-shirt, and I quickly came to realize that I loved the numerical part of the marketing aspect, so therefore I really coalesced the two pieces. And after a couple of months, I did it for a while, and then I realized, you know what, publishing doesn't pay. And I say that with a little bit of jest, but realistically, I think this was a moment for me where I decided to take my life in my own hands, and I said, you know what, there's money out there to be made, so I have to find an industry that allows me to make a little bit more money. And I think it was taking a risk, realizing that there were some pieces of the work that I so enjoyed, but I also knew that a lot of that experience could be parlayed into any industry. And I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves credit for the fact that the learnings that we have can be translated anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the area where you're focused right now, but you really could parlay that learning over to other things. Fast forward into what I did a couple of years ago. I left the financial services field, and I actually became an entrepreneur like these brave ladies here. But I quickly realized that you have to start a business in an area where your passion is. So you listen to these ladies and you hear all the passion, you hear a new category being started by DryBar. That's phenomenal, right? Because that's game changing in this industry. And you also heard from Millie in terms of her fashion line, and also Yael in terms of what she's doing with organic clothing. So I think it really just starts back to find your passion, stay with it, because you're going to get a lot of no's along the way. But don't let those be the things that stand in your way, because there's just such a big world out there and so much to experience.
Great, thank you, Heather. Well, speaking of passion, Michelle, you have been in fashion your entire career.
You're making me feel old.
You already told us how old you are. And you started your business so young, so it's an amazing story. But you obviously you were trained in design, but then you're starting a business. You were not trained in necessarily starting your own business. What approach did you take, and how did you think about, did you know what you were getting into when you started your business?
I always knew I wanted to be a fashion designer. I think I was really lucky that from a very early age I knew. I think I was 11 or 12, and it hit me like a lightning bolt, and I had that passion and I followed it. And everything I did, from my education, after school activities, everything set me in that direction. And I think it's important. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I think it's really important to really learn the business and the industry that you want to be in. Sometimes kids right out of school, they just want to, okay, I'm going to launch my business, but I don't know all the aspects of my industry. I think it's really helpful to work for other people first, work for other companies. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you're going to make those mistakes on someone else's dime, not your own. So that's what I did. I made mistakes on other people's dimes. But but seriously, it was really important. I started at Hermes and Louis Vuitton in Paris. I got a luxury goods background, and that really taught me about, the beauty, the fantasy of fashion. And then when I moved back to New York City, I got a job on 7th Avenue working for a coat company, and that was like a completely different experience. But I learned about the business side of fashion and about production and how I can make something beautiful, but how am I going to actually get it to market? How am I going to do that? So I think having all those experiences definitely helped me, and I knew when I launched Millie, I'd arrived at that lightning bolt moment that I think, in speaking with everyone here, we all had that moment where we knew the time was right. I have something that I can contribute that doesn't exist yet, and I did it.
Well, so to that point, let me then throw it to Alli and Yael. What are some things, and Michelle, you can answer this as well, what do you feel like you know now that you wish you knew when you started your business?
So I think the thing that really stands out for me is, I just didn't really seek enough advisors when I was just starting out. I think I was shy, or maybe a dangerous combination of shy and egotistical. But I was like, I don't need any help, and also I'm too shy to ask for it. So I think I would have avoided a lot of mistakes had I sought out advisors that could give me like the right direction at the right time. Made a lot of mistakes, like learning through experience, that could have been avoided.
That's a good tip.
I think for me, I feel like if I could do anything different, I would have listened to my parents and gone to university first instead of straight to design school. I was hell-bent on going straight to design school, but I think that having a more well-rounded education, especially in finance, being an entrepreneur, that it would have served me very well, because I tend to delegate things that I don't want to delegate as much, because of my insecurity about money.
See, that's the whole theme. So we're going to help get you more secure about
Thank you.
money.
I get asked this question a lot, what would I have done differently? And I mean, I don't feel like I would have done much differently, if I'm being really honest. I think of course we made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I personally made mistakes and things that we look back on like, we could have done that differently. But I think it was all part of the journey, and I don't look back, because I do get asked that question so much in interviews all the time, and it's like, I just don't, I wouldn't do it any differently. Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things we learned along the way that have helped us improve and grow our business into a much better business. But I don't think I would have changed the way it all unfolded. And, I'm the same way with money, and it took me a long time to get comfortable with all the terms, and it just doesn't really stick in my brain. I don't know why. Like, I can learn a term, and then a month later, I'm like, what does that mean again? And, it's just not interesting to me. I mean, money is interesting, right? But all the other stuff isn't. And so, luckily, I have a great business partner who really helped with that, because it wasn't my strong suit. And I think that's also such an important part of starting your business, especially when you take on partners, is knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And mine wasn't the finance part of it, and mine really wasn't even the business side of it. I was very creative. I knew hair, I knew how to run a salon, and so I partnered with my brother who knew how to do the other stuff, and we both taught each other. I mean, my brother knows more about blowouts than any straight guy should know, but that was the exchange, and that's we taught each other different sides of the business.
That's great.
Can I just add to the comments that were just made? So, no, we were just talking about this in our little side room before we came on stage. And one of the things we were discussing is we can't shy away from the monetary aspects of our business. And how many people in the room are aspiring entrepreneurs like these ladies here? Great. Don't shy away from the financial aspects of your business, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to just have that creative part of it. That's important, because that's where the passion is. But you don't want to be the person waking up 10 years later and not realizing that the money that was supposed to be in the bank is not there. And, you thought you were getting revenues of X, and then when you looked, all the expenses have taken over the revenue. And I'm not going to say it's easy, but sometimes it's just the simple math of, 1 + 1, guess what, guys? It always equals 2. And so if that's not where your sweet spot is, ensure that you have people that you trust. And I know you're pretty fortunate in that you have your brother who's a part of your business, but don't shy away from it. And if it's not your strong suit, find people that you trust, because it is going to be the thing that sustains you along the way. Sorry, Marion, I didn't mean to.
No, I want you guys all to jump in and have be more of a conversation, because I think that's such great advice. Even if it's not your strong suit and you delegate, and we all delegate, surround yourself with the right people, obviously, people that you trust, and at least get a basic understanding. So, because you hear so many of these stories, and you don't want to have that happen to any woman or anyone.
I have a point I'd like to add on that.
Please, yeah.
So I happen to be good at numbers, but I'm not scared of math. But when I first entered into business, and as our company grew, getting on these phone calls or having meetings with bankers or venture capital, it's all terminology, it's all acronyms, and you can sit in a conversation and literally be a smart person and understand zero of it. I think the biggest thing for me is if I'm on a call or if I'm in a meeting, I stop everybody and I go, what does that mean? And I don't understand that, and I think a lot of the times, and then maybe they'll explain it, and the way that they explain it is full of terminology and acronyms. You're like, no, I don't know what any of those words mean, so now you have to explain it in a way that makes sense to me, and I think having the confidence to be like, I'm a smart person, so I should be able to understand anything that you want to say to me, and if you can't say it in a way that makes sense to me, then you're not the smart person. Not to be
It's such a great point, because it's also a little bit of an intimidation factor, I think.
I think terminology,
throwing out the terminology and hoping that you're not going to ask the question. So it's such a great point to have. It's all about the confidence to be able to say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what that acronym means. So spell it out for me and explain it. And not everybody is a CPA or an investment banker, so it's fine to ask those questions. It's a great point. Well, let me shift gears a little bit, but related to this point of making sure that we're actually helping with the future generations as we think about our daughters, for those of us who have daughters. How, what can we do to make it different for them? And Heather, let me go to you first, because obviously you're in an environment that is dominated by men. So how do you manage that?
so. It's a great question, and I know this is going to sound like a bit of a cop-out answer, but it actually isn't. Most days, I don't think about it. Like, I don't think about the fact that most times I am the only female in the room, and as most of you will also notice, I happen to be African American, so you have the African American and you have the female combined together, so most of the times you are the only one in the room. But I think I've just gotten so used to it that I don't think as much about it. So what I tend to do is I tend to reach out more broadly across the overall spectrum of the organization. I always make myself accessible to the young men in the organization, the young women in the organization, because I feel that without the young men understanding their part in the overall dialogue and the conversation, I think that's something will get lost over time in translation. However, I do think it's important that you have to spotlight minority groups that are not a part of the dialogue. And in a lot of times, it is the woman that is not a part of the dialogue. So spotlighting it for the short term is important, but over time, we just have to move to a different place. But again, my style is I try to bring everyone along. And I'll share a really brief story. There's a young woman who worked in the organization that knew her very well, thought very highly of her, and we spent a lot of time in a mentoring relationship. And she left the organization about 6 months ago, and I was completely blown away by the fact that she took time out of her day to write a very long letter to me about the ways that I made a difference to her. And honestly, I was so shocked because I didn't deliberately set out to do it. So I think it's just that message around you're making an impact, you're making a difference, try to bring as many people along as you can, and sometimes you're impacting people in a way that you're just not even sometimes truly aware.
Well, I think that's such a great point because now she's going to pass that on. I mean, that's a conversation I have with women that I mentor because I had that when I was moving up in my career. So if you then pass it on, we're all helping the future generation.
Yeah, and, you know, and to add to that, I think that that's something, like when I was growing up, there weren't a lot of female entrepreneurs. It was, I don't even know. It was like big organizations, and like you certainly didn't have access to anybody. I mean, there's so much access to us, to other female entrepreneurs, and I think that for the generations coming up, we are setting an example. Like I did it, you can do it, and you know, back to like being in a room with men and not understanding terminology. I mean, our board is made up of like Harvard graduates, and I didn't even go to college, you know. So like that is not knowing anything. It's very intimidating, but I think, you know, a message that I know I've certainly sent to the 3,000 stylists that work for DryBar is like, if I can do it, you can do it. And I think that mentality is important, at least from my perspective, to, you know, to say like, hey, anybody can do this. It's just hard work. You don't have to have gone to Harvard. You don't have to have an MBA, you know. And so I think that's kind of where I feel like I make the biggest impact. It's like this, like, you know, you can do it too.
So that's a great lead into my next question, which is to the moms in the group. How are you speaking to, or what are the messages you send to your kids to try to, you know, really build that confidence and make that change for the next generation?
So I think that's that like ties into something you said about reshaping the idea of what it is to be a woman. So I think that there's this idea, when I think about it, I think about reshaping what it means to be a woman and reshaping what it means to be a professional. So my daughter's 2.5. I bring her to work, you know, and she runs around, and sometimes, not every day, once a week or once every 2 weeks. And, you know, and sometimes I can't pay attention to work a little bit and I'm giving her more attention, but she also sits there and watches me work. And, you know, one of our executives, our president at the company, she just had a baby like a month ago. And, you know, and we're going through this really important project right now. And, you know, she can't be 100% checked out. And so we're on calls at night and she's like pumping and breastfeeding. And I'm like, and we're on a call for 2 hours as this is going on, dealing with stuff. And it's funny because it's like, I'm like, the noise is coming out of that side of the phone. But I think it's, you know, and that's a meeting for us. And we're reshaping how we approach, you know, motherhood and work and making it work for both sides.
Right, absolutely, and I think that's so important. I actually had a call with someone on my team who's a male, who has 2 young children, and said, I'm sorry, I'm home today because my wife had an important meeting, and so I'm, if you hear the kids in the background, and I was like, I love that, and I look forward to hearing the kids in the background. Of course, they were completely quiet for him. So, other thoughts? Michelle, you do a lot with Girls Inc. I'd love to hear you talk about that a bit.
Sure. I'm a mentor for Girls Inc. Girls Inc. is an organization which provides education, critical life skills, training, healthy living, education about healthy living. And in mentoring them, I'm a big believer in learning by doing. And doesn't it sink in when we actually do it? It's one thing to read it in a textbook,
Absolutely.
but when we actually do it, it's such a wonderful experience. And so I've had a group of girls, maybe about 40 girls, who have come to my office, and I created a project for them to create a t-shirt collection. So not everyone, they all love fashion, but not everyone wants to be a designer, but you could do a lot of things within a fashion company. You could be, in-house counsel for a fashion company, you could be an accountant, you could be a production person or a publicist. There are a lot of things you could do. So and so many things were incorporated in learning about how to make a t-shirt collection. And they had to they had to break into groups and create their own slogans for the t-shirts and pitch them to me. It was great. It was like Shark Tank. It was really fun. And they were so amazing. I was so impressed with them, the way they pulled together and gave their presentations. I could never have done that at that age. They are just the most amazing girls. And the t-shirts that we created are available on Millie.com, and proceeds go to Girls Inc.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, to that point of I think there's just so much change in the industry, like, things like that, having these girls create this product that then you're selling.
And break the cycle of financial insecurity, and they had to learn how to price out a garment so that they were going to make money on it.
That's great.
Yeah, breaking the cycle. I think is so important.
That's terrific. So, Yael, you're in this. You're in the with Reformation. You're in this sort of different side of the business, of really looking at the trends and how the trend of that sustainability has really kind of reformed the industry. Are there any other trends that you're seeing when it comes to fashion and money?
I think more than ever, there's so many options, and I think people spend more time browsing and looking for the exact right thing that they want, So I even think about it myself, like, before I buy a shoe, right? Like, I'm like, okay, I kind of know what I want, and I look at so many different online stores, and I get emails, and I favorite, and I have, you know what I mean? And I think this concept of, I think this access to all the information and access to such a breadth of options is just making people a lot more thoughtful about their purchases. I also think, and like, this is kind of obvious, but I see it myself in my own life and my friend's life, like, we're spending so much money on wellness and, like, between working out and, a massage and our meditation apps, that there's less money going to, I think, things.
Right. That's great, thank you. Well, I want to open up to the audience, but let me just throw out one more question to all of you, sort of a two-part question. So, you're all thought leaders in your respective industries. What do you think needs to happen culturally to affect this change that we're talking about around money and women and confidence? And is there any advice that you would give to the women in the room? The men in the room as well. We don't want to be all of it. We're talking about women and money today.
I think it's just about talking about it, is panels like this and not, and breaking those kind of barriers, the uncomfortableness of talking about money and, and how to start a business. And I find that most women or people that I talk to that are thinking about starting a business, there's this like, I can't do it. I don't have this, I don't have that. It's just kind of not being afraid to just start it and do it and kind of figure it out as you go along. I mean, that's what I did, and I think that's what we all did. It's like I think there's a certain like confidence level that you have to be willing to take that first step in that leap. But I think the more you hear about other women, other people doing it, the more kind of confidence it gives everybody else that I can do it. So I think it's just like talking about it and getting it all out there and not being afraid to like say the things that you don't know.
Actively seeking help from friends. I have friends in finance, and you know, they teach me about it.
That's
What
great.
is this? How do you do bond math? You know, like, what is it? But no, but seriously, I think there's a comfort level when you know you can seek help from friends and not have to go to a big institution, and you know, it can be a little intimidating.
It's your network.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of what a trend we're seeing from women is you're looking for advice from people that you trust who are in your network. That's great. Heather?
No, the only thing I would add is, and I'm probably the dinosaur in the room, I look around and I see lots of millennials, use your profiles to connect with other women that are not necessarily in your circle, right? So for those of you on LinkedIn or Instagram or, come on guys, give me the rest. No, seriously, there's so many important women who are out there sharing their stories. Don't be afraid to link with those people because that's where you're going to start picking up a lot of your new knowledge. And I love what these ladies said about don't be afraid to ask questions. It's so important, and I'm just blown away sometimes at the fact that we'll all sit in a room and half the people will have no idea what the other person is talking about, but because everyone assumes that everyone else knows what they're talking about, no one will ask. So I love what you said about ask questions because they're there to try to intimidate. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
have right here. So I think there's so like World Economic Forum just did a study about the disparity between men and women, and it's actually quite shocking. They measured it across different levels and stuff, and I think they said that in the past year we improved, making the parity between men and women did improved 1% a year. And at the current rate, they estimate in 60 or 80 years or something, or 100 years, we'll be at full parity. Okay, so that's improvement, but like, it's a little sad.
60 or 80 years is not going to help out.
So my
with
daughter's
children.
daughter. And so when I think about that, I wonder, and I've been thinking a lot about it since then, and I wonder if there's some need for a policy change or legislation that can help speed that along. So it's like if 50% of the population is women, and let's just say something like a board, right, where it's highly discretionary, right, who you choose, and if your board is 20% women, like, ergo, isn't there discrimination involved in those choices? Because you can't, it's not like computer programmers where, okay, 90% of applicants are male and 10% are female, so you can make that choice. But, an example is like a board is very discretionary who you choose. So I wonder if there was, I can't remember what it is, if it's like, I know there's like a country that does it where they have, legally they say 50% of your board needs to be female. Like, what if that was adopted in California to start up?
It's such a great point because that is part of the problem, that there's such a small percentage of women on boards.
Yeah,
So-
or VC is like another example. It's like, I understand if I'm a VC, I'm gonna invest in businesses that I understand and get, right? I don't understand, lingerie or, you know what I mean?
I understand this need to get your hair blow dried.
Right, so that's why it's gonna be harder to get money into female businesses. So it's like, it's the fact that there's, I think venture capital is the worst industry for female representation.
Yeah, it's a great point. On that,
I'm sorry, I just
No,
want
go
to
ahead.
add one point. I promise. So if you're not on the entrepreneurial side, you're not looking for venture capital, you just want to go to a corporation and do work. Don't forget, your first day, when you're negotiating to go into that company, you ask for the salary that you deserve. Men do it every day. I will tell you that I have firsthand experience. I hire people all the time. Men will always tell you exactly how much they want to make. Most time when a woman interviews, she'll ask what should her salary be. Don't do that. Be like the guys. Tell them what you want and most times you will get it.
that is such an amazing point, Heather. Thank you. It's actually a stat that when we did the research around men and women, that's exactly what we found, that millennial women well, and I hope I get this right off the top of my head, millennial women will ask for a promotion at the same rate as men, but will not ask for a raise at the same rate as men. So again, it comes to the money. There's some kind of intimidation or lack of confidence or a feeling of empowerment to have that money discussion. So that's what we're trying to change. So that's a great way to pass it off to the audience. Just any questions you guys have.
I'll start with that. I'll leverage that. Not every male always asks for what they want either.
In general.
Oh, I can leave it to you to throw out the other side of the equation. Well, that's.
But I think it is about asking for your self-worth, and I'm glad you brought that up, especially to young people. And could you expand a little bit more about how do you calculate how would you know what your self-worth is?
Yeah, so great question. So in this new economy, I think there's a website out there that publishes salaries for different disciplines. So utilize those utilize those resources, but also, you know what? People are so open with their salaries these days. I'm actually pretty surprised. So you know what? If your friend's willing to share with you what he or she makes, use that as a part of your input. But I do believe those external websites right now, they're actually a really good place for that. And I think most times, most places will give you some kind of a market range in terms of where it stands. So again, ask the question.
Absolutely.
So for those of you in fashion, how do you think that, or how do you expand your business when this industry is now becoming so saturated? There's so many like-minded women trying to achieve the same thing. So how are you rising above that, and even for the beauty industry as well?
I think I'll start. You're right, the industry is so saturated in fashion. There are so many brands now. When I started Millie, I had 10 competitors, and now I have 200 competitors. So it's really important, I think, to really have a unique point of view and stand for something. Stand for something in your collection, get behind it, a tight edit, but then also stand for something socially. What do you really stand for? And and communicate that and make an emotional connection to your customer.
Any other thoughts?
Well, I think, in beauty, it's similar. I mean, I think, I thought what you were going to say is what I was thinking is like, just kind of be the best that you can be and not pay too much attention to what everybody else is doing. I mean, and I think for us, it's like, constantly checking back in with our clients and making sure that we're checking all the boxes that people are happy. And if they're not happy, why are they not happy? And constantly like examining and re-examining your business and figuring out what's working and what's not working, and I think you do have to pay attention to the competitors and make sure you know what's going on. But having a real point of difference is for me in our business, we honed in on this one specific area, and we've had a lot of copycats since. But I think that for me, I came from such a unique perspective on this business as a hairstylist and a client, and I think that's why I was able to work. But finding that you kind of stay in your lane, but pay attention to what's going on, and just kind of keep upping your game. And I think the competition for me has really kept me on my toes and watching what everybody else is doing and making sure that we're doing it better, which I think we are.
Absolutely.
Hi, I just want to know what role social media played on each of your fields, and right now this is the age of social media. Everything branding is all done on social media, but you each started somewhat in the early 2000s. What was that like, and is it easier now that social media is around?
So I really started Reformation in 2013. Before that, it was like a vintage store. 2012, sorry. Social media was gigantic for us. Like, I think in 2013 is like really, it was so helpful for us, and it was really, we had this ability to get everything out there, and we would do these tests to see like, just how powerful, it was all Instagram really. We would do these tests to see how powerful Instagram was for us, and we would like just put like a discount code just on Instagram, or release a new product just on Instagram, and it would just have such a big, especially when your business is small, like things like that can have such a big effect on the business. It was so critical for our ability to grow quickly in the early days.
I mean, when we started, like, I believe we started our company the year Instagram started, which I didn't even really know about. It wasn't like a thing yet. It was in 2010, and Twitter was like, and I know obviously Twitter is still big and around, but it's such a different platform. And that was, initially Twitter was like where everybody would post comments about their experience at DryBar. And like, you could kind of post pictures on Twitter, but not really, quality wasn't good. And then Instagram started to really explode, and then women started taking pictures of their hair after a blowout, and they would, all of their friends would see it, and that was like our biggest marketing push. I mean, it was so organic that because of social, it played a huge impact on us growing our business, because 20 of your friends or 300 or 3,000 of your friends would see that you were, just in DryBar, and like, what is that? I want to go. So that was a huge thing for us. And it's funny now, I don't know if you guys experienced this, but I feel like Twitter has become the new Yelp, where like that's where we get more complaints now when shit goes wrong.
Absolutely.
I know, it's weird how it transformed from being this like, I used to think that like Twitter was this like fun, happy place, and then all of a sudden it's like not so happy anymore. Where Instagram is, because women are posting pictures of themselves. But I'll tell you, what is important about social media that I find is that you are on top of it. I mean, we have a whole team of employees, like maybe 20, who are just, their job is just responding to the comments that we're getting on Twitter, on Instagram, and making sure that we're really paying attention to that, because that stuff, spreads so fast, and you have to really be on top of it. So that's an area in business, speaking of changing, the way business is run, it's like you need a social media team to help, with all of that, to make sure you're guiding the conversation the best you can.
When I launched Millie in 2001, there was no social media and no e-commerce. It didn't exist. I remember Net-a-Porter coming to me to pitch, we have this e-commerce site and we're going to sell clothes. And it was like, really? And now flash forward, to 2019. I've seen the complete landscape and been a part of it. And I love social media. I love Instagram. I love being able to test styles on Instagram, get feedback, try something on in the studio and see if people like it. Transactions, it's like its own store now. It's like a Millie store. And I love being able to have emotional connections with people over social media. I've met so many amazing people on Instagram who I'm now friends with. Has that happened to you? Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what business do you have?
I want to launch my own online publication, basically. So like College Reporter, Times, Vogue kind of publication.
Well, you go, girl. Other questions? It's hard to see with the lights. Oh, over here. Hi, Marianne. Leslie.
I have a question about one of the points you made in the beginning, and maybe Heather, this is for you too. I think you said that only like 1.5% of funding really goes to female entrepreneurs, and I think one of the things, so for whoever in the room maybe has the next idea for the next DryBar or Millie or Reformation, one of the things is they never know where to start. So like, what would you recommend in terms of changing that? In terms of where should people start in terms of getting funding for their businesses if they have a great idea? Because I think that's always a barrier for women, being like, who do I turn to? Do I go to a bank? Do I go to my brother? Where do we start?
I think Heather, I'll let you jump in, but I would just say that's sort of part of the conversation that we're starting, and starting with the network and understanding kind of where you are, I guess, in the journey and how much funding you need, because you could start with a bank, you could start with a loan, you could start with a credit card for small business that you can actually leverage for funding. And I don't know if any of you
Yeah,
want
I
to
mean, I was
jump in
going
as
to
well.
say, it's also like friends and family. I mean, our first one 1.5 million that we raised was all friends and family. So I know that, before you go to institutional money, you can leverage a network around you, and you'd be surprised if you have a great idea and there's people who believe in your idea. I mean, I couldn't believe like people were coming out of the woodwork. I mean, customers, celebrities that came into DryBar were like, we want to give you our money because we want to be a part of this, which I know is like a little bit rare, but it definitely, if you can use a network of the people around you, especially because I'm sure you agree, and it's much easier to raise little money, or harder to raise little money than big money, because the private equity and venture capitalists, they want to infuse 20, 40, 50 million dollars into your business to grow this massive business. That's how they get their return. But when you're small and you just need to raise a couple $100,000, that's when you really can utilize friends and family at that early stage. I don't know if you agree.
But that's after you had DryBar. How'd you pay for the first DryBar?
Well, the first DryBar, I did have my brother who put in the majority of the money. I put in my life savings, and that we were off to the races. But I'll tell you, even I had started a blog before DryBar opened, Missy. That basically was, me chronicling all the steps of everything that we were doing. And we had a couple people come to us who saw the blog and were like, this is such an amazing concept. I thought about something like this. Can I get in? It happened to be like a Kuwaiti prince, and they had a lot of money, and I was like, that's a whole other story. But we did have them invest because we ran out of money in those early days. We thought it was going to cost $300,000 to open the first store. We were wrong, and so we needed that money, and it was and then we did go to other friends and family before we opened. I mean, it did come after, because you have to prove a concept. I mean, that proof of concept is a real thing, and if you don't have any proof of concept, you're gonna have a hard time getting someone to give you money.
Yes, so here's what I would add to this conversation, because I hear 300,000 and I hear $1 million, and I know people who are usually just starting out, they're probably thinking 10, 20, 30, maybe $5,000, because most people, that's usually the starting point, because they're usually not that sophisticated. One of the things I would say is, take the time out to write your ideas out clearly on paper. You don't have to be an expert at developing a business plan, but if you could just clearly articulate your vision, your story just make it 3 sheets of paper. Don't make it anything super complicated. And start pitching that to, like everyone just said, to friends, to family. Guess what? Even your local bank, you can get a small business loan. Even go into the SBA, but don't underestimate the power of putting the pen to paper, because sometimes when you do that, it actually helps you to clarify and crystallize your own thoughts and vision. And I think sometimes that helps to bring the money to you, because now you could show people and not just speak to it.
I also think there's 2 parts to it. It's like, and I think you and I are similar in this situation. It's like, you have to figure out, like, if your idea is truly unique, it's almost impossible and you have no proof of concept, it's almost impossible to raise capital. Because capital is based on, hey, I see these existing models, and they can reference it to understand what the return is going to be on the business. So if you truly have a unique idea, it will be almost impossible, and you don't have an MBA or finance background, it will be almost impossible to raise funding. So the first thing is cobbling together proof of concept, right? Where it's like, you cobble it together and you have like, you put together a business and it works. Then it's like, then as soon as you have that, then you can go and raise capital. That's sort of, I think, it's like kind of a 2-part.
And something we haven't really talked about is branding and how important that is. I mean, obviously that's a huge part of my business. It's a huge part of your business. It's like, the branding aspect of it. If you are writing your ideas down and you're pitching your idea or something, if you don't have a great name and you don't have a kind of a consistent, articulate brand associated with it, no one's going to talk to you. I mean, I can't emphasize the branding piece of it enough, and we haven't really talked about it today, but I believe so firmly with my whole heart that DryBar is a great concept, but it was the branding that initially got people in the door, and like the fun, whimsical vibe that we created, and I always felt like that got them in the door, and then we kept them in the door by giving them great hair and great customer service and a great experience. But women fell in love with the branding of DryBar, and that was really like such an important piece that I couldn't leave here without saying.
I'm glad you added that. I mean, big and small. It's for Visa. Branding is a huge part of their business, so it's an excellent point. I also just want to make one point about the sort of VC funding. there is something in studies that I've seen as we've been really looking at this topic, that there's a point at which women-owned small businesses are like, oh, I don't want to get too big. There's when you need to get to this sort of $40-50 million, when you really want to try to grow from a VC funding perspective, it is putting yourself out there to say, I'm ready. And I think that women just tend to be, again, it's that conversation to say, put your hand up and say, I'm ready. So that's really where all the conversation is happening, and there's some work that we're doing in Visa with a program we just launched called She's Next, which is to focus on women-owned small businesses and create the workshops and actually connect to the Wells Fargos of the world, or funding sources, to just even to get a better understanding of sort of where to go next, or your next level of funding. Do we still have time for more questions? We could keep talking for another hour, at least I could keep talking to this woman for another hour, but I don't know how much time we have left. Sure. One last question?
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Hi, okay. I just want to say thank you. This has been really interesting. I have a question for Yael. So I was recently in your store on Bond Street at Reformation, and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to how you guys are using smart technology in your store.
Which I love so much. It's the coolest thing. You have to tell everybody how it works.
And then we're all going to go there and check it out.
So basically, basically how Reformation was working, it was like we were doing tons of business. We had like 2 or 3 stores there doing tons of business, but the Yelp reviews were horrible, right? Because it's kind of like a more, not expensive, but it costs more than say like Zara or Topshop, and so you expect to have like a more boutique experience. But we were not able to provide that because it would just be so many people coming in, and there was like these long lines and holding the clothes, and the people that worked there were just cleaning up all day, and they couldn't help anybody, right? And the stores were a mess. And the stores were doing well, so it was like we had to open up a lot of them, right? And I was like, I don't want to open stores like that. And so I had been in these other experiences, like these new approaches to stores, and I was like, we need to completely reinvent the store experience. And I think for me, shopping online was so much easier and more pleasant than going to a store, because when I walked into a store, it was like so confusing. I couldn't find my size. I'm like in like this terrible dressing room where there's like horrible light and it's dirty and I don't want my toes to touch the ground. And I feel like women all know these things, right? And I don't know why no one's like fixed it. So I was like, let's fix it. Let's use, some of this VC capital to build a new type of store. And so the way that the store works is it's sort of like a showroom where all of the stock is in the back. So there's tons of stock in the back, like thousands of pieces. And in the front, we only put the best of the best, right? So this is like a retail stat, but 80% of the sales usually come from 20% of the styles in a store. So I'm like, let's just put the 20-30% of styles in the front and then keep all the rest of it in the back. And so you go and you can have kind of an e-commerce experience in the store where you can see all the different options, you can find your size, you can shop by size, you can, see what you want, and when you say you're ready to go to the dressing room, it sends like a little, kind of notification to the people in the back, and they fulfill the item straight into the dressing room through these I'm like kind of a nerd, these do you guys know the Narnia? Yeah. The magic wardrobe? So there's a magic wardrobe in the dressing rooms that allows the people in the back to fulfill the dressing room, and so you walk in the dressing room and it's just in there. And if you're in there and you want...
Like magic.
Like magic, yeah. And so if you want another size and you're in the dressing room, you just pick it on the screen, and it also will just show up in your magic wardrobe. So somebody in the back and whatever, there's a whole process that goes along with it. But what ends up happening is if you're an efficient person who's type A, the store is very satisfying.
Because you didn't say the part where the little voice says, okay.
That's my voice. That's totally my voice.
And they're like, shut the door. We can't put your items in until you shut the door. It's so great. I've told so many people about that. You have to experience it if you haven't.
Yeah, so it just makes shopping really easy and efficient. It takes 5 minutes to browse. So what ends up happening is some of the things that we realized, and then I'll stop because I obviously get really excited about this, is the average person spends usually like 20 minutes browsing and 5 minutes in the dressing room. And what ended up happening for us is people spend 5 minutes browsing and 20 minutes in the dressing room. And they're just trying things.
I've spent hours.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, we've also made the dressing room, the other thing that's important is we made the dressing room like pleasant and like you look good in it. And we have like different lighting settings so that you look really good in the mirror. We actually have skinny mirrors too. They're like tilted just right.
Oh, I'm coming to your store, I love that. So that could not be a better way to close out the conversation of how I changed it. I mean, so I just want to, let's all thank these amazing women who have such great stories. I admire everything that you've done so much, and I appreciate the time that you've given to Visa and to everyone here to share your stories. And thank you to all of you for coming and being so actively engaged. And please, let's start to collectively drive the change. And it takes both the men in the room and the women, and start to have the conversation, because fashion's changing and money is changing, so let's talk about it. Thank you.